Hola everyone, this is Chaz Agus, and I'm going to do another dramatic reading of Chapter 2 of Vergoldengaugen Silberschwimmer by Aurora the Silver Jewel. I hadn't intended to continue with it. I really didn't think the first dramatic reading was my best, but there's been more than a couple people that have enjoyed it, so I thought, what the hell? See if I improve, see if any other people continue enjoying it, especially really bad fanfiction. So without further ado, I present to you Chapter 2. Hey, Hughes, the blonde spoke softly as she placed the flowers, lilies, on the grave. It's been a while, hasn't it? She sighed. I'm sure you'd be giving me hell over this. Edward laughed at the images in her mind. Then you'd be fluttering pictures of Alicia in my face, going on and on about how sweet and adorable she is, trying to get me in a dress so you can take pictures of her and me together. Slender fingers glided against the top of the grave marker. Damn it, Hughes, I miss you. I wish I could talk to you so I could get some advice or at least some suggestions for my situation. I sure as hell could use it about now. Both hands now settled on the marker. She stood there for a short while. I'm going to Risenbold to see Al, Winry, and Granny. Please look after everyone here, especially Mustang. That bastard, he seems to need so much looking after. A seemingly gentle smile graced those lips. I'll see you later, Hughes. Swinging the suitcase over her right shoulder, she was making her way towards the train station, till something caught her eye. Looking over at it, and contemplating for a quick second before a devious Cheshire cat-like grin crossed Ed's lips. Ed looked over her shoulder. She felt like someone had been following her since she left the graveyard. A cat? I've had a bloody cat following me? Ed stared owlishly at the semi-small animal. The dark kitten clambered over as Ed continued to stand. As it stretched up on its hind legs, gilded eyes took it in. It had odd-colored eyes, the right one gold, the other aqua. Its fur was sable, though Ed was sure that she spotted some spots in the sunlight. She could see that it was skinny and meowing weakly at her. It looks old enough to catch its own food, but maybe there isn't anything to catch right now. Ed bit her lip. She couldn't just leave the poor thing. Scooping up the semi-little thing, Ed checked its belly. A girl, huh? Once again, Ed started walking to her destination. I guess I'll name you Ophelia after a character in the play Hamlet. I'll admit, you are pretty cute. Cat in her left and suitcase still over her automail shoulder, Ed mewed softly, happily. By the time Ed got to the station, the kitten was in a sling under her coat. Ed had made the sling on the fly, from some stuff she found close by. Okay, so maybe this isn't the earliest train home, but early enough. One ticket to Risenbold, please. Patiently she waited. She paid the amount due once the person in the booth said what she owed. Palming the ticket, leaving the attendant choking on his own saliva, apparently drooling over her. She went to get a few things. Since her train wasn't due for a while, I'll need to get some food for Ophelia, to at least hold her over till we get on the train. Edward was oblivious to the look she was getting, appraising and even a bit lust-filled. Edward went into the little shop that barely a hair's breadth away from the benches she remembered all too well. Gently patting the Ophelia in the sling, quietly praising her for being silent or asleep, it didn't matter. She must be used to eating meat, since she's had to catch her own food. Golden eyes scanned through everything, pausing when it caught her eye. Sardines, leck, but I'm sure Ophelia won't be so picky. Taking 2 tins in hand, Edward browsed around for anything else she might need. Ed was settled on her bench, little Ophelia pretty much scarfing down all the little fish. The blonde smiled as she poured some water into a tiny bowl she picked up in the store. Setting it down, she wondered why no one seemed to notice. I guess it's every day they see a cat wandering around and the people feeding them. Once she was full, the cat jumped off the bench and walked around a little, though Ed didn't let her wander too far. Ed hoped no one would recall her being here, or at least where she was going. Once she saw her train, Ed tucked the kitten away under her coat. Time to go. Her prosthetic arm picked up the suitcase. Standing up, she waited till she could board the train. As Ed was on the steps, she took one last wistful look at Central, knowing she'd come back. She always did. Ed walked on board. Ed watched the scenery flying by, a contemplative smile on her lips. Almost reminds me of the French landscape. Growing bored, she pulled her luggage down and took out the book she borrowed. The seats are still as comfortable as I remember, she thought as she laid herself out on the cushions. Flipping the book open, she focused on it. Ed tuned out everything and everyone out, a habit that hadn't left her. Ophelia watched her owner from the floor, wriggling a little in judgment, hopped up onto the seat. Carefully, the cat made her way onto Ed's belly. Almost immediately, her left hand caressed the little one's back. Ed didn't look away from the words on the page. The petting continued as Ophelia's eyes closed, purring contentedly. Many people came and went for those days on the train. Most of them Ed took no notice of. The only ones who she did notice, other than her cat, were the children who came. All of them were interested in the mismatched-eyed cat. During those times, Edward put the book down, giving them her undivided attention. One of the little girls, who was at least 10, begged to braid Ed's pretty hair. Reluctantly, she agreed, for the little brunette to do so. The parents of all those kids crowding around her asked, though they had idea what to call Ed, if they were being a bother about half an hour after it all started. To which she answered no. It actually felt nice to have her hair braided again. They asked, what seemed like to Ed, a billion of questions. All she did was smile and answer the best she could and appropriately for kids their age. Soon enough, Ed had to wonder why some men and women tried to talk to her while she was with the kids. A few of the married women nearby smiled and laughed slightly at how unaware Ed was. Everyone around her, excluding anyone under 15, saw the physical beauty. Few saw the beauty of her soul, and the little ones saw her sharp mind, but none of her sharp tongue. None of them knew if she was a man or a woman. Ed still retained some hard lines of a man, but had gained the soft ones of a woman. Her currently clothing obstructed the view of her breast. Even Ed's voice gave them no clues as to her gender. It was a perfect balance between masculine and feminine. It was a bit of a higher pitch than the voice Ed had as a man, and her accent only threw them off even more. To some it didn't even matter, so thus they tried to flirt, quite unsuccessfully. Edward smiled brightly at the first sight of Rissemble. Smoothly the blonde placed the snoozing cat in its sling. Standing once the train stopped moving, she took the case down and moving it into its usual position. Making her way to the doors, she ignored anyone trying to talk to her. Only when the kids still on the train were saying bye did she respond by waving and grinning at them. "Should I see Mom first?" Ed asked herself once she was off the train and on her way down the dirt path. Mewling came from under the coat. "All right, Ophelia." Stopping while taking off her coat and pulling it open, and then off, the kitten jumped out. Over the last few days, she had gotten a little bigger. Gold and Aqua looked up at its owner waiting for her. That's when Ed noticed the difference between her cat and others she'd seen before. Ophelia was larger than most kittens her age. Ed guessed the cat was around 5 to 6 months old. Large ears and very long tufts at the end of each ear. I wonder why I hadn't. To hell with it. I'll go straight to Winry's. I'll go see Mom a little later. Again she started walking the familiar dirt roads of her childhood as she made her way to Rockbell Automail. A blue-eyed woman looked up from her work when she heard a knock on the door. "Just a moment!" Winry rushed from her tinkering to get to the door. "Welcome to Rockbell Automail. What can I do for you?" "I need someone to look at my limbs. Heard you were the best." The lighter blonde blinked, taking in the customer. This person was a bit taller her. Too bad Winry couldn't tell if it was a man or a woman, and the strange drawl and the way the W's were articulated confused her. Golden amber eyes were surrounded by long aureate lashes. A smirk was plastered on those nicely shaped lips. Gilded locks framed soft cheeks and the semi-masculine jaw. To Winry it was enough to give the illusion of femininity, but at the same time it wasn't. "Wow, this person is really beautiful. Kind of reminds me of Ed." "Al, Ophelia, stop trying to climb up my leg." The shorter blonde bit her lip in laughter as the other muttered something about a damn cat. "Please come in. I'd be happy to take a look while—" "Right arm and left leg." Winry's mind was boggled by the information, so much she nearly tripped. Recovering quickly, the woman opened a door. "Please remove your clothes and I'll be right back." A nod was the only response as the golden blonde went into the room with the cat following closely behind. Winry quickly went to get her tools, passing her grandmother on the way. "New one?" "Yes, a new customer, Grandma. Wanted me to take a look at them," the granddaughter answered while grabbing everything she needed. Pinocchio just watched as Winry passed her by. "Granny, I'm back," called a gentle-sounding masculine voice. "Welcome back, Alphonse." As Winry walked in, she saw her customer's back. It was heavily marred. She also saw the bra and swell of breast peeking from behind the flesh arm. Now, knowing she was dealing with a female, Winry continued to look. This woman is so broad for her petite frame and apparently very muscular, too. "Sorry for the wait." "It isn't a problem." The left hand was gently petting the animal's head. Making her way over, Winry started her examination of the automail. She asked the other to various things. Move her arm, then her fingers, wrist, and any and every joint of the fake limbs. Winry also saw all the assortment of scars painted on the canvas of skin, some of them a little familiar. "It's an excellent shape. The design is similar to my handiwork, but I know it isn't. And this metal alloy, it's extremely resilient and awfully light. It also seems to be very resistant to corrosion. Again, something I haven't seen before." Gold eyes looked into blue, a little mystified. "I see. Also, I noticed there's a small alchemic circle on your shoulder plating near your clavicle. It's well hidden." "A circle? Could you?" Someone knocked on the door. "Winry, may I come in?" Gold Amber whitened in joy at hearing that voice. A sheet was thrown at the not-so-decent female. Once she was wrapped up in it, Winry called him in. "Granny said that—" Dark amber eyes widened in recognition. The much taller blonde stumbled over and fell to his knees. "But big brother?" A huge smile was given. "I knew you'd recognize me, Al. Although I'm not exactly." Ed sighed. "You should call me sister," she told him grudgingly. Ed was then promptly hit with the wrench. "Damn it, why didn't you tell me?" All Ed could do was grin while rubbing her aching skull. Blue eyes narrowed as if calling Ed a little bastard. "Good thing Al's here. Take a look at this." By the time Ed finally had her clothes on, she had been yelled at, hit again, hugged, and Winry wanted to take her automail off to examine it further, which Ed's answer was a resounding no. Ed didn't know who made it and certainly didn't want Winry to screw around with it since it was in perfect working order. Al had touched the circle during the yelling match between the blonde females, and Ed gasped. She could feel her brother's hand on her metal forearm. The younger sibling noticed and once more touched it, and again Ed couldn't feel the warmth anymore. Winry then finally mentioned that she saw another one between Ed's artificial hallux and index toe. Ed was finally allowed to put her clothes back on, after Winry and Al left. She touched the circles again. Ed felt whoever designed these circles had to be someone who had more alchemical knowledge than herself. Ed wriggled a little. The nerves weren't used to the sensations. She was repeatedly tugging on her right sleeve and rubbing the left trouser leg. After seeing Pinocchio, they all sat down while Ed told them what's been going on the past grip of years. At the same time, they were talking. Gentle metal digits scratched between Ophelia's ears, and Al's eyes were focused on the cat, but he was listening to his sister. When Ed finished her tale, Ophelia was pleasantly nestled in Alphonse's lap, purring away. "What's your cat's name, Ed?" "Ophelia. On a separate note, they think I'm dead, don't they?" Al's jaw dropped somewhat, but slowly nodded. "I always knew you were alive somewhere. So did the general and the rest of the office. But how?" "I spotted the ruddy grave marker. It was near Hughes." Then a particularly conniving grin appeared. "Ed, what did you do?" "You'll see," Ed said all too sweetly. Al groaned while the elder Elwick laughed. Ed put the baggage onto the bed and opened it. She set the book on the nightstand after taking it out. An oversized, on her, button-up shirt was now in her hands. "Why the hell did I take the bastard shirt?" A tiny voice answered. "Because it smells like him." She shook her head wildly. "No!" Her hands were clutching at the cotton cloth. I should toss this damn zing, though Ed made no move to do so.